Hello everyone, my name is Joey Panganiban and I will going to tackle about CSS box model. Everything in CSS has a box around it, and understanding these boxes is a key to being able to create layouts in the CSS or to align items with other items. In this presentation, we will take a proper look at the CSS box model so that you can build more complex layout tasks with an understanding of how it works and terminology that relates to it. Let's begin about the question, what is the CSS box model? The CSS box model is essentially a box that wraps around every HTML element. It consists of margin, borders, padding, and the actual content. All HTML elements can be considered as boxes. In CSS, the term box model is used when talking about design and layout. The content area is the innermost layer of the box, contains the real content of the element such as text, an image, or a video. It can be sized using properties like width and height. Let's take an example. I have here a picture, the heading, and a paragraph. So, let's start in the picture by using the width and auto. You can use also auto or any kind of any variable values, like let's say 280 pixel. Let us save, and then in our heading we can also use the width like 280 pixel also, with a height of, let's say, 100 pixel. Alright. The standard CSS box model. In the standard box model, if you give a box a width and height attribute, this defines the width and height of the context box. Any padding and border is then added to that width and height to get the total size taken up by the box. Let's assume that the box has the following CSS defining width, height, margin, border, and padding of 350, 150, 10, 25, and 5 pixel for the border. If you give a box a width and a height attribute, this defines the width and height of the content box. Any padding and borders is then added to that width and height to get the total size taken up by the box. Let's assume that the box has the following CSS defining width, height, margin, border, and padding. The space taken up by our box using the standard box model will usually be 410 pixel. I will use the laser. 410 pixel, and then for our total width, and the height must be 210 pixel from the sum of their attributes. Well, you will notice that margin is not included for the width and height. It is because it will affect the total space that the box will take up on the page, but only the space outside the box. The box area stops at the border. It does not extend into the margin. You might think it is rather inconvenient to have to add up the border and padding to get the real size of box. You would be right. For this reason, CSS had an alternative box model introduced sometime after the standard box model. Using this model, any width is the width of the visible box on the page. Therefore, the content area width is that width minus the width for the padding and border. The same CSS used above would give the result of width 350 pixel and height of 150 pixel. By default, browser used the standard box model. If you want to turn on the alternative box model for an element, you do so by setting box sizing box border on it, like this one. By doing this, you are telling the browser to take the border box as the area defined by any size you set. If you want all your element to use alternative box, and this is a common choice among developers, set the box sizing property on HTML, then set all other elements to inherit that value. Okay? Right. This is an example of a alternative box. You can see two boxes. Both have class of box, which gives them the same width, height, margin, border, and padding. The only difference is the second box has been set to alternative box model, like this one. The margin area. The margin area is invisible space around your box. It pushes other elements away from the box. Margin can have positive or negative values. Setting a negative margin on one side or your box can cause it to overlap other things on the page, like this one. Whether you are using the standard or alternative box model, the margin is always added after the size of the visible box has been calculated. We can control all margins of an element at once using margin property or each side individually using equivalent longhand properties. Margin top, margin right, margin bottom, and margin left. The border is drawn between the margin and the padding of the box. If you are using standard box model, the size of the border is added to the width, height, and the box width height of the box. If you are using alternative box model, then the size of the border makes the content box smaller as it takes up some of the available width height. For styling borders, there are large number of properties. There are four borders and each border has a style, width, color that we can manipulate. You can set the width, style, or border of all four borders at once using border property. Here are the example of the border properties. To set the properties of each side individually, you can use border top, border right, border bottom, border left, or to set the width, style, color of all sides, use the following: border width, border style, border color. And this is the longhand properties. In this example, we have used various shorthands and longhand to create borders. you can notice that we used border top with dotted green, that is one, and then the border right, 1 pixel solid then black, this is, and so on. The padding sit between the border and the content area as white space. Unlike margin, you cannot have negative amounts of padding, so the value must be 0 or a positive value. Any background applies to your element will display behind the padding. It is typically used to push the content away from the border. We can control the padding on each side of an element individually using padding property. Or each side individually using equivalent longhand properties. Padding top, padding right, padding bottom, padding left. If you change the value of padding on the class dot box in the example below, you can see the changes where the text begins in relation to box. You can also change the padding on the class dot container, which will make space between the container and the box. Padding can be changed on any elements and will make space between its border and whatever it inside the element. Your developer tools can make understanding the box model far easier. If you inspect an element in browser DevTools, you can see the size of the element plus its margin, padding, and border. Inspecting an element in this way is a great way to find out if your box really the size you think it is. So let's give it a try. In order to access the Dev tool, you have to click in Chrome. You have to click the Ctrl-Shift-C and see the CSS. Alright, so as you can see, the orange, the flesh color is our margin, and the blue color is the content color, the main content. Let's now try first to add the box sizing. As you notice, there is an asterisk here. Asterisk shows that it covers all the attributes within the CSS. We can start by typing the box sizing. Alright, sorry. And border box. Margin. And for our image, we can type the padding with 25 pixel. And then next to the padding is the border. Let's say we have the border of 8 pixel, and then we have dash, and then RGBA of 240, 240, 240, and then 0.5. As you can see, there's a invisible here. Invisible